say real power doesn't walk in the sunlight, T moves underground quiet, calculated and invisible in the heart of the Sahel, where the sand devours secrets and shadows stretch longer than roads. Something ancient is waking up. Beneath the cracked earth of Burkina Faso, beneath the abandoned mines, the dried riverbeds, and the military checkpoints, there are tunnels, miles of them not mapped by GPS, not recorded on any colonial blueprint, and not spoken of except in whispers by old miners, retired smugglers, and soldiers who saw it too much and lived to regret it. This isn't a myth. It's not science fiction. It's the foundation of something much larger, because according to leaked satellite footage, intercepted transmissions, and the testimony of one vanished French operative, Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just build these tunnels, he inherited them. He expanded them. And now, in the dead of night, convoys move through them, disappearing into the ground without a sound, only to emerge 600 kilometers away in another country. Escape routes? War preparation? Or something else entirely? The West thinks it understands Africa's revolutions. But this time, they're not chasing guerrilla fighters in the jungle. They're chasing ghosts beneath the soil and the man who walks above it. All Captain Traoré smiles, knowing that if the coup fails, if satellites spy, if foreign boots land, he'll vanish before the first drone can find him. This is the story of the hidden veins beneath Africa, of the buried lifelines connecting, resistance cells, of the secrets carved by hands that refuse to kneel. This is the tunnel network beneath Africa, Traoré's secret escape routes. The first hole in the earth that didn't begin with soldiers. It began with silence back in 2013. A team of gold miners operating just outside the town of Hound in western Burkina Faso broke through a rock shelf expecting ore, hoping for fortune. What they found instead was space. A hollowed-out cavity extending far deeper than their maps suggested. It wasn't natural. The air smelled stale. The walls were chiseled. There were marks, not random ones, but inscriptions. Tool patterns, handprints turned to ghost shadows on stone. They never reported it. They didn't need to. Because within 72 hours, that entire mine was quietly shut down. The workers were relocated. The company changed names. And the official story became just another file gathering dust in a forgotten government drawer. But someone noticed. Someone inside Burkina Faso's transitional government had eyes on that mine. Years later, when Captain Ibrahim Traoré rose to power, that same mine site was reclassified as a military asset. Satellite images from 2024 show unusual development at the location. Solar panels, reinforced entry shafts, drone jammer beacons. Whatever was under Hound Traoré knew its value. Some say it was the first portal into the network. Others believe it was just one of many. Because similar shutdowns happened across the Sahel, in Mali's abandoned salt corridors, Niger's uranium fields, and even in old colonial rail tunnels that once carried stolen resources to distant ports. But what's chilling is the coordination. These weren't accidents. These sites form a pattern, a crescent of strategic locations that curve beneath West Africa's soft underbelly. And at the center of the crescent, Ouagadougou, the Burkinab capital, sits atop an ancient network of trade routes that, according to early 20th century French maps, were never fully explored. Maps recovered from declassified colonial archives show trails marked Interdict Forbidden. Too deep. Too unstable. Too haunted, they claimed, but Traoré didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in leverage within months of consolidating. Power Traoré commissioned a covert engineering program, not funded through standard budgets, not staffed by visible contractors. No blueprints. No permits. Just select members of the Army's Combat Engineering Corps, trained abroad, flown in at night, working beneath the cover of dust storms and curfews, what they built was not a simple tunnel. It was a system. Ventilated shafts disguised as water. Wells. Communication rooms camouflaged inside livestock shelters. Access doors built into the foundations of old churches. There are rumors of a tunnel that stretches from a former Portuguese fort in Guinea-Bissau all the way to a warehouse near the Burkina-Mali border 400 kilometers apart. Of course, none of this exists on paper, and yet, from 2025 onwards, strange reports began surfacing. French reconnaissance drones losing signal over dry zones. Convoys shadowed by vehicles that vanish into the desert. Western journalists catching heat waves rising from the ground, only to find no infrastructure nearby. One U.S. diplomat described it as trying to fight smoke with bullets, so where does it lead? Why dig so deep? Theories abound. Some say Traoré fears an assassination campaign and has built the network as a survival measure, a presidential escape path if all else fails. Others insist it's a strategic logistics route, a way to move weapons, food, or gold without interception. But the most persistent whispers tell a bigger story, that Traoré is preparing for a siege, not a literal one. A political, technological, and economic siege waged by powers that don't need to invade physically to dominate. Sanctions, media blackouts, proxy rebellions. And in that kind of war, the tunnels aren't just for escape, they're for outlasting. Imagine communications that run underground, immune to satellite interference. A power grid supported by subterranean solar batteries. Water drawn from ancient aquifers never touched by colonial pipes. Hidden labs where engineers test drone parts, 3D print replacement circuits, and fabricate clean energy cells. But there's more. What if these tunnels weren't just built for Burkina Faso? What if they were built with others? Evans suggests joint activity. Satellite anomalies show synchronized movements across border regions, convoys entering tunnels in Niger and emerging in Ghana. Traoré has hosted several closed-door summits with Sahelian leaders, many of whom arrived with no public motorcade. No announced flight just appeared, seemingly from the ground up. This isn't infrastructure. It's architecture of a different, kinda sovereign nervous system beneath a colonized skin. Some intelligence analysts have begun calling it the Sub-Sahelian Artery, others the Ghost Road. But in Burkina Faso, there's another name whispered by those who helped build it. La Veine Noire, the black vein. To them. It's not just escape. It's return. It's continuity. It's the underground reclaiming what the surface forgot. And if one day the skies go dark with foreign drones, if embassies shut down and generals defect, if every surface becomes unsafe, Traoré won't run, he'll descend, and Africa's heartbeat will echo. From below. The second mouth where nations enter without Namathi say the desert buries truth, but the wind uncovers intent. Not far from the tri-border region where Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso blur into each other, there exists a stretch of land. Locals refer to as La Gorge Muette, the mute throat. It is a place where sound itself seems to vanish. No birds, no machines. Only the endless hush of Sahel winds brushing over sand that hides far too much. It is here, beneath a fractured plateau carved by millennia of erosion, that the second known tunnel mouth exists. But unlike the site near Hound, this one is different. This one breathes. Nighttime thermal imagery captured by a disavowed French drone unit showed temperature fluctuations at the foot of the plateau, not from the sun, but from internal ventilation. Heat rising from stone. Then, moments later, nothing. As if the ground exhaled. And then forgot how to inhale again. By the time French intelligence tried to send in a team, the entrance was gone. Collapsed? Camouflaged? Reburied? No one knows. But the team never returned. And in the weeks that followed, two senior officials at the French Ministry of Armed Forces resigned without explanation. Somewhere deep inside that plateau is Entry Node 2, known among insiders as the second mouth. It is not a tunnel. It is a crossing point, a location where encrypted codes are exchanged via biometric relay, where unmarked vehicles trade supplies and information not on any national registry, where operatives, informants, and even leaders, African and foreign, meet, masked in sand and silence, and vanish again into the network. There's a reason the second mouth exists near the tri-border. It's not a coincidence. It's geopolitics with a shovel. This region has always been a nightmare for foreign powers. It is too vast, too complex, too decentralized. Armed groups, tribal alliances, shifting loyalties. It is where colonial maps, failed and modern interventions collapse, and Traoré knows it. He knew that to build an underground lifeline, it needed to breathe through ambiguity, to thread through chaos, not clarity. So he didn't just map geography. He mapped instability. He chose places where no satellite analyst could tell the difference between a smuggler, a rebel, or a revolutionary. That's where the Shield Traoré's most loyal internal security force operates. According to leaked reports from ECOWAS intelligence, the Shield has embedded agents in all three countries surrounding the second mouth. These agents don't wear uniforms. They don't salute. They're shepherds, taxi drivers, cell phone repairmen, women who sell roasted corn at roadside stands. Their mission is simple: watch the watchers. Notify the system of any change. And when a true threat approaches, activate the fail-safes coded sequences that seal off tunnel mouths, flood false leads, or, if necessary, collapse entire chambers to erase evidence. One ECOWAS analyst who defected described the system like this: it's not just tunnels. It's a breathing, thinking labyrinth. Like someone took the internet and buried it underground. And at the heart of this labyrinth is trust. The second mouth is not open to all. Even high-ranking Burkina military officers are turned away unless pre-cleared by biometric key and signal pulse. Traoré has personally approved no more than 17 individuals to use that crossing, among them a former Congolese intelligence chief. Now acting as an advisor in Mali, a Ghanaian energy magnate funding off-grid solar farms across the Sahel. An exiled academic from Cameroon who once leaked colonial surveillance logs to WikiLeaks. These are not soldiers. These are architects, and they are building something far more dangerous than a tunnel. A coalition born underground. This is where fiction blurs into fear. One Western diplomat recently said off record, "What scares us isn't that Traoré is underground. It's that ideas are traveling with him." There are rumors now, just rumors, of new protocols being drafted below the earth. Declarations of economic severance. Plans for an intercontinental African transport route shielded from IMF observation. A data vault powered by geothermal. Tech storing dossiers on foreign operatives gathered over decades. There's even talk of a subterranean university, a place where African scholars, banned or silenced abroad, now teach in anonymity beneath their own soil. If true, this is not just resistance. It is re-education, a place where the rules are rewritten far from the surveillance of satellites and suits. But the second mouth does not speak. It watches. It decides. It remains cloaked in sandstorms, guarded by men who do not write orders. They receive them by pulse, by code, by silence. And what of Traoré? Some say he visits the node monthly. Others believe he lives near it now, above ground in a modest farmhouse with no electronics, no connection to the outside. But when the time comes, when borders close and comes die, he will enter the second mouth and keep walking, because the tunnel isn't just for escape. It's for rebirth. He will travel the black vein not as a fugitive, but as a ghost of empires past, whispering through stone, carried by dust, immune to bullets, and from far beneath the feet of those who once ruled this land, his voice will rise again. You may own the sky. But the earth remembers who it belongs to. The builders and the buried you've heard of the tunnels. You've imagined the escape. But what you haven't asked yet is who built them. The story isn't about machines. It's about men. About hands. About silence, because beneath the concrete. Behind the camouflage, under every grain of desert dust packed into those shafts, are stories. Some known. Most buried. It began long before Traoré's rise. Back in the early 2000s, French intelligence intercepted chatter about strange construction. Movements near the Tapoa province. Small, quiet crews. Local tribes moving in rhythm without leadership. No salaries. No contracts. Just work. The reports called it tribal migration patterns, but it wasn't migration. It was initiation unbeknownst to the world. Some of these tunnel projects weren't just strategic. They were spiritual. The Gourmanche people of eastern Burkina Faso have long held myths of serpent roads, underground paths used by ancestors to escape raiders, spirits, and slavery. Stories passed from mother to child, told only during eclipses. These weren't fairy tales. They were maps. Traoré knew this. So when he came to power, he didn't just consult generals. He met with griots, tribal elders, nomadic historians, people who remembered which rocks echoed strangely, which grounds swallowed cattle without a trace. These were the real surveyors of the tunnels, and their knowledge was older than any satellite. They told him where to dig. And they told him where never to dig. One such site sits deep in the cliffs of Sindhu Peaks, a vast network of basalt pillars that once served as sacred burial sites for warriors who resisted both colonizers and African kings. Traoré ordered a no-touch zone around it. Not out of fear, but out of respect. The tunnels serve the living, he reportedly said. But we do not disturb the dead, yet not all builders were voluntary. Leaked reports from 2026 reveal a secret prison labor unit code named ECHO. Division composed of former mercenaries, insurgents, and high-value prisoners of war, their sentences commuted in exchange for labor in low-visibility infrastructure. But ECHO Division was different. They didn't dig blindly. Each was paired with an elder, a spiritual guide. Before every dig, they were made to fast. Before each shaft was drilled, a libation was poured. There are even photos smuggled out through activist networks of murals inside these tunnels. Not graffiti. Instruction. Messages for future travelers. Symbols, warnings, maps rendered in ochre and charcoal, because the tunnels were not only for movement, they were for memory. 1. Chamber in the Burkina Ghana corridor is said to contain a sealed vault of documents. Written testimonies from ex-presidents, confessions from fallen generals, letters never sent, all preserved in humidity-controlled crypts powered by underground solar trickle. A buried archive of betrayal and resistance. Its location? Unknown. Its guardians? Silent, and above them all, at the command node near Wahigaya, is said to be the cartographer. No name. No photo. Just a voice old, calm, and always speaking in parables. Some say he was a former untopographer turned rogue. Others believe he was once part of the Vatican's secret archives division. But whoever he is, he's the only person said to have memorized every tunnel's path. No maps. No files. Just memory. He doesn't leave the network. He doesn't communicate via radio. His messages come through runners, barefoot boys who emerge once every 2 weeks from nowhere, carrying coordinates written in black ink and sealed in wax. His word, according to some sources, has equal weight to Traoré's own. But here's the twist. The cartographer claims he didn't build the tunnels. He says he only reawakened them. He speaks of chambers built in pre-colonial times, not by Slaves, but by dissidents, by architects fleeing fallen empires. Tunnels that date back to when the Songhai Empire crumbled, when the Ashanti feared annihilation, when the Nubian architects vanished from Egyptian records. Chambers that housed scholars, astronomers, weapon makers, priests, all of them erased from modern textbooks, but alive in stone and darkness. He says Africa was never conquered completely because parts of it went underground. Now, Traoré simply reconnects the veins, but why? Not just to hide, not just to move, but to prepare. The builders were not building bunkers. They were building arteries. Lines that would one day carry something much bigger than weapons or food, people. Traoré's most radical plan, leaked from a defector's tablet in early 2027, speaks of a reverse exodus, a hidden operation to relocate tens of thousands of Africa's most brilliant minds, doctors, engineers, teachers, programmers into the tunnels temporarily. Secretly to train, to teach, to strategize like a cerebral underground city-state, invisible to the world, but prepared to rise when the surface burns. This is why the tunnels twist, double back, disappear into dead ends. It's not for defense. It's for encryption. Each turn is a cipher, each chamber a repository, and somewhere deep inside, a central. Command pulses unconnected to the internet, powered by geothermal converters, housing an AI built by scattered African tech collectives. Its name? Unknown. Its purpose? Unknown, but one thing is certain: the tunnels are no longer just tunnels. They are Africa's subconscious, waking up, and when they rise, they won't roar, they'll rumble from below. If the coup fails, the earth opens. The said Ibrahim Traoré was cornered. By 2027, the pressure had reached a boiling point. Sanctions tightened. Intelligence leaks multiplied. Western envoys arrived cloaked in peace, but veiled in threats. Neighboring regimes, bought or broken, began to distance themselves. Inside Burkina Faso, whispers grew louder. Could the revolution sustain itself? Could Traoré truly hold the line? The world watched the surface. But the surface was a distraction. Traoré knew this. In fact, he planned for it because years earlier, during a classified midnight briefing beneath the presidential compound, he issued a single directive to his inner circle, a phrase that would become the unspoken mantra of the resistance: if the coup fails, the earth opens. It wasn't metaphor. It was logistics. Hidden beneath every major city under Burkina control lay an access point, not just for escape, but for activation. These weren't bunkers. These were thresholds, thresholds to an underground continuity of power, a parallel republic, a sovereign network that didn't rely on embassies, electricity grids, or even the internet. In this world, governance wasn't managed through laws or legislatures. It was encrypted into systems of tunnels, chambers, codes, and contingency protocols. A military strike on the capital. Traoré would already be gone. A blackout of satellite comms. Tunnel fiber relays would still hum. A puppet government installed. They would rule a shell while the real leadership pulsed from beneath, untraceable. But what shocked even Traoré's closest allies was how much of the world had already been wired in, inside sealed caches beneath Niamey, Bamako, and even Kinshasa. Encrypted vaults waited ready to open with biometric triggers linked to rebel commanders loyal to the cause. These vaults didn't hold gold. They held data, blueprint plans for alternate education systems, emergency currencies, lists of trusted resistance doctors and engineers, tactical breakdowns of NATO deployment response times, voice print authenticated. Audio from leaders believed to be dead, but whose voices now serve as guidance. And there were instructions for when not, if the surface collapsed, activate the deep mandate. One file read, a plan that included moving civilians beneath city thresholds during false flag attacks, broadcasting resistance messages from underground radio towers camouflaged as broken turbines, releasing decoy footage convincing enough to buy days of confusion while the real command chain moved unseen, triggering seismic disruptors in abandoned French mining tunnels not to collapse cities, but to distract satellites long enough for escape. Traoré didn't just build for hiding. He built for replacement, a ghost government, a phantom economy, an invisible militia, but what scared the foreign powers most wasn't the infrastructure. It was the belief. By 2027, entire villages in the north had gone dark, not because they were overrun, but because they had vanished underground. Schools closed their doors and reopened days later beneath the earth. Aerial drones found nothing. But local shepherds spoke of children learning by the light of solar-powered lamps, of surgeons operating in quartz-lit caverns, of councils held in echoing chambers beneath sacred ground. Even culture moved underground. Ancient instruments were stored in sealed sonic chambers. Libraries were etched into stone walls, a new hieroglyphic language developed by rebel linguists. Songs were recorded not digitally, but through harmonics etched into copper plates. Africa was not running. It was retreating inward, like a heartbeat pulled back before a powerful surge, and at the center of it, all a door. Unconfirmed, unphotographed, but always mentioned the threshold gate, said to be hidden beneath the Sahel, guarded by a 3-code biometric lock. 1. Part Traoré's voice, 1 part his retina scan, 1 part a code spoken only in a language that has no written form. The gate, if it exists, is not an escape hatch. It's a reset button, a chamber that, once entered, triggers the full release of the Horizon Protocol, a massive leak of files implicating every Western nation and Africa's destabilization across 5 decades, a mass exodus of mines and military units through the tunnels. The complete blackout of surface comes a silence that says, you can have the sky, but the earth is ours, and the nothing.no broadcasts. No announcements. Just silence until one day the earth opens again, and a new Africa walks out, trained, untouched, remembering Traoré is not building tunnels, he is building legacy. He is not digging to escape. He is digging to survive the surface because he knows the truth. Colonialism may wear suits and sanctions now, but it still fears the dark. It still fears what it cannot see. And when the world above becomes too loud, too poisoned, too corrupt, Africa will go silent, not to surrender, but to reset. And when it returns from beneath the dust, beneath the ruins of failed foreign doctrines, it will not speak in protest. It will speak in design, and every tunnel will be a birth canal. Beneath silence, power waits. You've seen wars waged in daylight. You've heard revolutions shouted from podiums. You've watched regimes collapse on television screens. But what if the next revolution doesn't rise in noise? It sinks in silence? What if the greatest act of defiance isn't in marching forward, but in disappearing completely? Rewriting the rules from beneath the feet of those who think they rule. Traoré doesn't just move in shadows. He builds them. He commands them, and while foreign powers chase signals in the sky, Africa is building something beneath their boots, not chaos, not rebellion, but blueprint, but design, but legacy. So the next time you look to the Sahel and see nothing, the next time a convoy vanishes or a village goes dark, ask yourself, is it gone? Or has it finally gone home? This is no longer just about tunnels. This is about terrain. This is about memory carved into stone and silence turned into strength. And if the world doesn't understand it now, they will. When the earth opens and Africa rises from below,